What is going on, everybody, and welcome back. So, I just finished Bayonetta 3 and the Multiverse of Madness. And there is a lot to talk about. So yes, Bayonetta 3 is about the multiverse, and there are a lot of different types of Bayonettas. There's apparently the Bayonetta 1, the Bayonetta 2, and the Bayonetta 3. And for the most part in this game, I was extremely confused as to which freaking Bayonetta I was playing as, because this Cereza sort of acts and fights way different than the previous two Bayonettas. And yes, I'm saying the previous two Bayonettas because I'm confused if those two Bayonettas were actually the same person, because they do dress differently. I thought they dressed differently because she just likes to dress differently. It's just what I thought. I didn't think they were completely different Bayonettas. And I'm starting not to like this multiverse thing. So yes, I did not like the story. That's one, because the story was extremely confusing and it had a character called Viola, which I don't really like. So I was looking forward to this game for a long time, for about maybe 5-6 years, if I'll be honest. And that's quite a long time to wait for a sequel. But when I played this game, reality kind of dawned on me because it's a Nintendo Switch exclusive. So that means that, yes, they'll be taking advantage of a lot of the stuff that ports don't take advantage of. But when I saw this game, it was quite clear it was going to be another No More Heroes 3 situation, where the game looks like pixelated garbage sometimes, and everything blends in together even though they're very colorful, because No More Heroes had a ton of color. Sometimes it was like a rainbow, or literally a rainbow.
It's like a rainbow.
And I'm okay with that, but if it's just going to be the basic colors sprinkled in to this pixelated soup, then the colors kind of look like vomit. And Bayonetta 3 sort of looked like vomit sometimes, even though it looked really cool in other places. There's just so much going on in this game that at times this game is just ugly, hideous even. And it's weird because Bayonetta is extremely beautiful. She's a gorgeous character, and there are variations of her which look equally as cool sometimes, except for that one that turned into the spider. She looked kind of dumb. Or if you like that 90s look, by all means, play as that one. But yeah, I wasn't really a big fan of this game. I thought I was going to love it. I thought because it was going to have kaiju battles, then maybe it would be great. But the kaiju battles, let's get into that first. I'm going to have this review just as messy as the game, because the game's pacing is everywhere. It doesn't have pacing. It's just everything at the same time, all at once, like Michelle Yeoh.
What's happening?
I felt like I was watching that movie, but without good pacing. Because even though that was a multiverse film, everything all at once at the same time, that had incredible pacing. Bayonetta 3 was everything all at once, but without pacing, and it was a dumpster fire at times. I felt like the game was too much. It had too much action. I know that's a weird thing, but a lot of the battles require you to use your kaiju or your giant demon lady, which brought the perspective out and sort of made the action 2 times slower, which I found to be jarring for the most part. And the kaiju battles are a main part of this game because the director made Astral Chain, and he also wanted to make Scalebound. For some reason, whenever it comes to that director, I have a hard time with his pacing. Astral Chain is an incredible game, and I know this, but for some reason, the action and just the fact that you could control someone else to fight, it just pulls me out of the game. It's probably me specifically, because Astral Chain is incredible. But for some reason, it just took me like 3 years to beat it. And I feel like at times it felt like I was forcing myself to play this game. But anyway, back to the review. Even though the multiverse genre is getting a little played out, Bayonetta 3 sort of utilizes it to just make better weapons for Bayonetta. And I think because this game is technically made by one of the people that made Devil May Cry, utilizing multiverse for weapons only sounds amazing. And Bayonetta does this little dance move. Yeah, I'm just like, wow, Bayonetta's getting in right now. She's going in with those dance moves while controlling this giant monster. I was impressed by that because you just see Bayonetta dancing. So it's a little bit distracting when you're controlling your kaiju. But then they take the action out of the base arena and they bring it to the entire city, and you play as this enormous kaiju that fights at 2 miles an hour. And it just slows the game to a screeching halt. And that is the problem with this game. There's so many sections that just stop the action and make it all about the kaiju battles. And I really get that the director wanted Scalebound, but you didn't have to slow down Bayonetta 3's action just to get Scalebound. I believe this is a case of be careful what you wish for, because Bayonetta 3 is now a slower game because of these kaiju battles, and most of the time required kaiju fights. And it kind of brings the action so far away from Bayonetta that it's almost irrelevant, it feels like. And it happens so much, and the game is just nothing but that. It's Bayonetta gets a new weapon from a multiverse person that just died, or is defeated, according to the end, and she gets a new kaiju, and the kaiju fight's really cool. I love the spider one. That was an incredible moment. They do have incredible moments in this game. They do have really, really good moments in this game, but they're just so everywhere that I feel like maybe it's too much. But besides all that, the battle system is similar to DMC, Devil May Cry, and Devil May Cry 5, with the way that it has trigger-focused combat, like you hold the left trigger to summon an enemy and then attack with the face buttons. I feel like they took some notes from a lot of other Devil May Cry games, especially Devil May Cry 5, with the summoning and how you can use different demons and creatures to fight for you. Yeah, but Bayonetta 3 is more about flashiness of combat, opposed to being an actual tool like with Astral Chain and the way you can do detective-focused platforming. In a way, Bayonetta 3's flashy combat makes the variation a lot easier to breeze past when you're like stuck at some kind of puzzle. There are puzzles in Bayonetta, but the combat doesn't really have too much to do with the puzzles like in Astral Chain. I feel like Astral Chain was more well thought out. Bayonetta 3 is all about the big explosions and the scale of the action, like how Scalebound was supposed to be. So Bayonetta 3, way more than Astral Chain, is making up for the lack of Scalebound. But obviously, Bayonetta 3 is my least favorite of the series, and I believe it is the last Bayonetta, which is unfortunate because the way it ended was not particularly the best. I didn't like the ending that much. I thought it was kind of cool how some characters were more of a focus in this game than they were before, but those characters that were a focus sort of didn't really feel like themselves too much, and I didn't like that. It didn't feel like the characters were doing what they would have done in Bayonetta 1 or 2. And once again, I wish there was more to talk about. I wish there was more story elements that were different, but a lot of the story elements were just surprise, bait and switch, and that's pretty much all the story was. Just a lot of bait and switch and explosions and colorful pixels and ugly visuals sometimes, most of the time. But there are some amazing designs to the enemies in this game, but I liked the enemies in the previous two a whole lot more than these homunculi. What even is that? Homunculi. They kind of explain what it is, but I'm still confused. I played the entire game and I'm still confused as to what these homunculi are. I just wasn't buying the story. Even in a story about a super powerful witch, I just wasn't buying it. But yes, even though the designs are really good, a lot of the artistic choices are compromised with the premise of the multiverse.
The multiverse.
And it's just too much at times, because you could have this incredible landscape and then all of a sudden there are 1,000 portals opening up because the multiverse just ripped open, and now we gotta fight all different types of enemies with all different types of characters, and it's just literally like Bayonetta 2's and Bayonetta 1's poster where you see all of the enemies and all of the monsters. That's what this game is. It's just everything all at once. It's like you gave your son or your daughter all of their favorite toys at the same time, and they're trying to desperately make some kind of storyline out of it. It just feels like someone is having too much fun with their toys. I'm sorry to say, but this game didn't impress me too much with the new character Viola. She's just kind of boring and maybe a little annoying sometimes for no reason at all. She just gets sad and annoyed at certain things because she is also herself a bait and switch in the story, and she's thinking about a current bait and switch that she can't say because of plot devices. Even Luca can be boring in this game. And yes, Luca is in this game, but he's not that great. He's not as hilariously clumsy as he is in the other two. And I feel like Sega sort of did listen with the cutscenes, because there's barely any slideshow cutscenes. I didn't like those, but they do have them here, but they feel very tacked on sometimes. They're just there for nothing. But the reason why the slideshow cutscenes do not work in this particular Bayonetta is because most of the enemies are the size of buildings. So when you show that enemy in a slideshow, you see like his butt cheek or something, and you're just supposed to know what it is. Like when a Multiverse Bayonetta showed up for the first time, she was on a giant monster and you just couldn't see the monster because the slideshow was there. And then they didn't even show her for a while after that one slideshow. So you have this important monster and character being introduced and you could barely see the two because they are on this little watch sort of slideshow thing. For some reason, it's very small, and they always have it very small because I guess they're working so hard on the action, they just can't spend enough money for the cutscenes. But yes, storytelling is once again at a halt because of the slideshows. But when there aren't big monsters, which is a very rare occasion, the slideshows do work again like they did in part 1 and 2, but I am still not a fan of the slideshows. I know a lot of people are, they like the slideshows, but guess what? I don't like the slideshows, guys.
Whoa, just take it easy, man.
But besides that, getting more into the gameplay, yes, the gameplay is halted by the monsters, but when you're not using the monsters, when you're just fighting, you have these forms that are sort of like demon glamour on Bayonetta, and she turns into sort of her own representation of her kaijus. And it's really cool because it's mixed in with the gameplay and you transform into these completely different characters mid-battle. So you're sort of transforming into these other Bayonettas that you met. And at first it was a little confusing because you completely transform. You're like in Devil Trigger. But after a while I got used to it and it makes the gameplay so much more exciting. But the thing is, the pacing of the combat is still halted because you turn into like this giant spider that can only attack so fast. And yes, a lot of Bayonetta's weapons in 1 and 2, sometimes she gets big weapons, but not all the time. I feel like every weapon you get in Bayonetta 3 is just really big and slow and not fast-paced like the swords or the katana. It's just not as fast-paced as the other ones, in my opinion, for the most part. And you do get different weapons, but a lot of these different weapons are very weird. Like you get some kind of hat, you're like a magician from like Yu-Gi-Oh or something.
You know what's coming.
And it's just a very strange weapon to use. Even Viola with her katana, and I get they're like, oh look, you have a katana character and she looks like the Scalebound character. But a lot of her moves are sort of slow and oddly slow at times. It's just the combat doesn't seem as fast-paced as I would expect. It's still really cool and you can take advantage of it to make it look cool, but for the most part, all you need to do is just dodge, hit the giant monster, summon your monster, and then take him out real quick. All of these extra beats, all of these fast-paced options aren't really as fast-paced as they could be because of all these additional gameplay things. And overall, my time with this game was kind of forced, and I'll be honest. And I wasn't really looking forward to making this review, sadly, after the first 5 hours of the game. A lot of the action got old real quick, and a lot of the homunculi look very similar to each other. And the runtime seems to drag, even though a lot is happening. But there are a lot of open locations, so it's not exactly an open world, but there are open locations in Bayonetta 3. And I would say that's a good thing, but it's also another situation where you should be careful what you wish for, because I wanted Bayonetta 3 to be more open. But because of those open areas, I guess the director didn't really know what to do with them, so he just had a bunch of random battles with angels or demons. You can collect halos. You have 3 different kinds of money in this game, and in those open locations you can run into these mini fights, not really bosses, and they don't really have anything to do with the world. They're just mini fights, so they just feel like side missions, but just random fights. And that also puts a damper on the pacing of this game, unfortunately. When you reach these open locations, you have to look for flowers, you have to solve these random, not too difficult puzzles. So all in all, Bayonetta 3 is the slowest in the series, but it has the most going on. And those two elements constantly clashing confused me and kind of tired me out, because we're going extremely fast. Now we're slowing down, we're collecting some stuff, we're going extremely fast. You know, it's sort of strange. It's like the game wanted to be one thing or another. And I feel like Bayonetta has just been a consistent rush of a game with fantastic enemies and incredible style. But now you have homunculi and Viola, and you have all these other characters that have nothing to do with you that are showing up because they share the same name, and it just puts this screeching stop to the action. But yes, moral of the story, be careful what you wish for, because the Scalebound game that you wanted might just turn out to be an okay Bayonetta game. And overall, because of so much disappointment, I give this game a 6.5 out of 10.
Not too bad.
It's not my glass of whiskey, I'm sorry. It's sometimes too intense, sometimes too boring for me. And it's either one or another extreme, like with Astral Chain, but with worse pacing. And don't get me wrong, if you like this game, and if you think this game is an 8, I completely understand, because it's still a lot of fun. And if you haven't played a Bayonetta game or a Devil May Cry game before, then this game is going to simply blow you away. And I understand that. But to give it a 9 is pushing it. There are just too many pacing issues to call this game amazing. And there are too many graphical and frame rate issues to call it a perfect time or an amazing action game, because it does have those issues as well. They're not too bad, but the frame rate issue is kind of bad at certain points, and it just feels like a poorly optimized PC game at times. So that takes away from the score. But overall, the story just sucked. The pacing, there was none. And I really hated the Jean locations. It's not that it had bad gameplay, it's just very stiff gameplay. The Jean levels were just so bad. And then when she finally shows up, you're like, oh, Jean. And I'm like, who cares about Jean? Jean sucks.
Allow me to introduce my dear friend. You bitch.
I just wish they would have done something better with Jean instead of having this side-scrolling BS that I want to get away from with Nintendo Switch games. Yes, I'm one of those people. I just hate another 2D game. And when I get a game like Bayonetta 3 and it's like, guess what? You're playing Jean. This is chapter whatever. It's 2D. It just makes me drop the controller. Every time I get up to a Jean level, I stop playing for like a whole day or two because I just hate it so much and I have to get past it. I just don't like it in particular. It's just not my glass of whiskey. I'm sorry. And yes, I forgot that I even had this game sometimes. Sometimes I would play it and then pick up my Switch and I would see the menu to Bayonetta 3. I'd be like, what the heck is this? Oh, right. I have Bayonetta 3. Bayonetta 3 is in my hand and it doesn't feel that way. It feels like I got a different game. And that's unfortunate. I really wish they could have done better. But yes, I give this game a 6.5 out of 10. A lot of people are giving it a 7, but I don't even think it's even a 7. I think games like Sonic Frontiers, that could be a 7 and it'll be just fine. But with Bayonetta, I just have such a hard time playing it. And it's just, that's a 6. But if I never played Bayonetta 1 and 2, I would give this game a 7 or maybe even a 7.5. I don't really have a lot of good things to say about this game. It's sort of a disappointment. When I got up to the first open world location, it excited me and that was my first 5 hours in. After the first 5 hours, there's another like 10 hours of just the same thing. It really doesn't change all that much. But this game definitely is not a 9 like how some outlets are saying. But anyway, guys, let me know what you thought about Bayonetta 3. Did this review turn you off to my videos? And if it did, oh well, it's my opinion. But I want to know yours. I don't know why I didn't like it as much as I thought I would. I didn't even like it half as much as I thought I would. But thank you so much for watching this sort of rant review thing. And I hope that the pacing of this review gives you an idea, pacing of Bayonetta 3. And yes, even after the credits, there's still pacing issues to this game. But I'll talk to you guys later, and I hope you have a good one. And here's the after credit pacing issue, just to give you another feeling of how the game is. The music in this game is so low and it's kind of hard to hear it sometimes, but when you do hear it, you're like, ooh, is that a good song? That's how far I got with the music. I went like once or twice and thought, is this a good song? I never thought the music in Bayonetta 3 was actually that good. It's pretty good, but is it like part 1 and 2 at all? Heck no. Part 1 and 2 go in with the music. So I'm sorry if the part I'm recording right now, you can't really understand me because there's a lot of noise in the background, but I have a busy life, sorry. But yes, didn't really like the music. I thought the music at the very end was good, but that was the only time I really heard it. Apparently they were playing like the same song like every single time. Definitely disappointing. You'll forget about this game, just like Jeremy Jan says.
I need scissors. 61. You wouldn't be trying to give yourself a bogus score using some ingenious trick, would you? That's just about as low as anyone could possibly stoop. I can't believe you sometimes.